Hey everyone, hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Here I am going to be reacting to the Women's Prize Longlist, giving you some initial thoughts. I am excited. I'm excited to do this video. I don't know. The Women's Prize is such a monumental, marker of the year, of the reading year for me. And so I'm excited to talk through some of my thoughts with you. If you are new to my channel, then hi, I am Shelly. I try and keep up with the book market in my own Shelly way, which means that I kind of keep an eye on prizes, but I also try and do my own thing. And you will see that come out when I'm talking to you about my reaction to this prize, to the Women's Prize Longlist in 2025. So if you're liking the vibe, I would encourage you to subscribe, stick around. Without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. We're starting with the book that I've read that's been longlisted, and then talking about authors I'm familiar with, books I'm absolutely not interested in, books that are not available to me, and then I will end with the books that have sucked me in the most. Initial thoughts are initial thoughts though. My mind changed so rapidly throughout getting to know the long list through everyone else's reaction videos that truly these are just like off the cuff momentary responses. And while I'm reacting, I would love to hear from you what you're thinking, how you're processing the list. So the one book I read was The Safe Keep, which I also predicted correctly, by Yael van der Woeten. By the way, there are, if I counted correctly and I did my research correctly, there are 9 debuts on the list. 9 out of 16. I feel like the Women's Prize should have a subtitle saying, "The Women's Prize for Fiction, we also support debut authors," because I don't know, that's just an extraordinary amount of debut authors on this list. And so we'll get more into that in a minute. So I have read The Safe Keep by Yael van der Woeten, which was a debut work. It was my Booker crossover. Usually a book from the Booker also makes it onto the Women's Prize, and this year it is The Safe Keep by Yael van der Woeten. This is a historical fiction book where we have a prickly main character who is living in a family home. It's set just after World War II, and a woman, a house guest, is kind of thrust upon the main character in her home, and there's a lot of tension there. There's a good twist. I didn't love the book. I felt like it was a Sarah Waters wannabe, and Sarah Waters is a much, much, much better writer. That's just my feeling. I know that there are so many people who love this book, The Safe Keep. I think that I was truly in the minority of those who did not like the book. So just know that. So I have read that. I'm feeling meh about it making the long list. Okay, so then there are 2 authors that I am familiar with. The author I'm more familiar with is Elizabeth Strout. This is not the book that was longlisted. The book that was longlisted was Tell Me Everything. Not this one. I'm going to stick it in the corner right here. So it is Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout, which is part of her Amgash series. She has a whole Elizabeth Strout universe, and this latest book is part of that universe. I have read all of Strout's Lucy Barton series, but I own Olive Again and Olive Kittredge. Olive Kittredge, which I believe won the Women's Prize, won the Pulitzer Prize. I'm overexcited. Talking too fast. So Olive Kittredge, I believe, won the Pulitzer Prize. I own Olive Kittredge and Olive Again, and I have not read them, but I have read all of her Lucy Barton series, which I really, really loved. And I know that Tell Me Everything is set in the same universe, which is interesting because I think to really understand the full context of Tell Me Everything, you have to read at least some of the other books in her series. Me having read all of one section of that series, I think I would understand a lot of the context going into Tell Me Everything, but I think I would know even more if I read Olive Again and Olive Kittredge. What I'm saying is that this is a series book. Tell Me Everything is a series book, and it's quite far into the series. And so it's an odd pick, and for me personally, I think I would rather read Olive Kittredge or Olive Again than to read Strout's latest book, which is actually not getting that much buzz or praise. The other author that I know of is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and her latest book has been longlisted, which is called Dream Count. Dream Count follows a Nigerian travel writer who's living in America and grappling with living through the pandemic. She's thinking about past lovers and choices, regrets, and other characters are pulled in, but it is an extremely contemporary book set a mere 5 years ago. So that's interesting. I know there's some controversy surrounding Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I have not looked into it and I am not educated on that subject, but I do know this. If I'm going to read one of Adichie's books, I'm going to read Americana because I own it. And this is the book that has won all of the awards and has been vetted. Like, Time has vetted this book. Since the time this has been published, Time has also made this book ever so more popular in our consciousness. And it has just been recognized here, there, and everywhere. So I would much rather read, like Elizabeth Strout, I would much rather read Adichie's vetted book than her new book. So if anything, the Strout and Adichie moment for me in my heart is that, oh yeah, those are authors that I've been wanting to read from or read from again. And this is a good reminder that I should pick up some of their back catalog. There are 2 books I have made up my mind about in terms of I'm very strongly not interested in reading them. And the first one is The Ministry of Time by Colleen Bradley. This is Bradley's debut work. Nothing against debuts. I have a couple that I actively want to read. What I've heard, though, is that it is a weird book that doesn't make a lot of sense. The concept is that famous people are dying and time travel is a thing. So just as they're about to die, they're plucked from history and brought to the present day, I believe. And it doesn't disrupt history because that person would have died anyway. So they disappear at the moment of which they were supposed to die. And the story goes on from there. I've heard that this is boring as snot. People that I know and respect have just said it's the worst. It's awful. And so I know that, and I respect the reviews of these people. And so I've just tucked it away as one of those books that I just don't really want to read. The other one is All Fours by Miranda July. Again, part of being a seasoned reader is making good choices for myself. This book, I have just thought and processed that Miranda July is not for me. Miranda July, with this book, All Fours, it is about a woman, middle-aged in perimenopause, who is going on a road trip and going to find herself. But as she leaves town, just outside of town, she has a rampant love affair with someone who's much younger than her in a motel, I think. I know this is getting a lot of praise, and I know that it is an unpopular opinion from me to say that I don't want to read it, but it's just my choice. I don't want to read it. So yeah, just putting that out there is those are the 2 books that I'm very firmly against reading for my own reading life. If you want to read it and they turn out wonderful reads for you, please don't let my words take any of your joy away at all. I'm so glad they worked for you, and I'm so glad, and if you're excited about these books making the list, I'm so glad for you, and I hope that they're wonderful reading experiences for you. I have a whole slew of books that are in this next category, and it's debut works that are not available to me. So I'm on a no-buy this year. I'm dedicated to not buying any books, also clothing and makeup for myself this year. And so I can't just go out and buy these books according to my rules, which is I'm okay with. So my library needs to have them in order for me to have access to them. So I looked at my library and they don't have these books. So the first is Good Girl by Aria Aber. This is a young woman coming of age story set in Berlin who finds herself in the grunge scene, and she's working through the grief of her mother. I thought it was interesting that this is Aber's not only her first work, but Aber is a poet. She's an award-winning poet. And so I'm wondering if we're going to get those poetic turns of phrases throughout this novel. The next book is Amma by Saraid de Silva. I have my computer over here. This is set in 1951 in Singapore. 10-year-old Josefina kills her abuser, and this event becomes the defining moment in the lives of Josefina's daughter and granddaughter. So it's through the generations, I'm sure, looking at generational trauma and working through this fractured family. Here's what I found interesting about De Silva is that she is a playwright. She's had 4 plays put out in the world. So her writing has been debuted before, just not in novel form. It's happened in plays, which I thought was interesting. Next up is A Little Trickery by Rosanna Pike. This I thought was interesting because it's following this main character, Tib, who seems very no-nonsense and won't take anything from anybody. And what's interesting is that her mama taught her that she doesn't have to bend to a big man's rules, but her mama is now passed and she's orphaned, and it's set in Tudor times. And up until, as I was reading through, I was like, that's fine, that sounds normal. And then I was like, oh, it's set in Tudor times. You are speaking my language. The thing is that I don't know if my library will get it, and I don't know how hard I'm going to seek out a copy. So it might just be one of those books that sounds good. Of course, a lot of these books sound good. They're meant to be sounding good. They're meant to appease the curious mind out there, and it definitely did that. But I just don't think it's going to be available for me. Next up is The Artist by Lucy Steeds, which is about an artist, if you can imagine, and it is set in Provence, 1920. Eddie moves to a remote farmhouse, and she's trying to create conditions for her genius uncle's art to thrive. And through this time of solitary moments, I guess, it's, over this sweltering summer and in sort of this, I think, isolated way of living, I'm not sure, the family secrets come out. Finally, in this category of debut authors whose books I think are ultimately unavailable to me, is the book Fundamentally by, oh my goodness, Nasaba Yanis. Now, here's what's interesting is that it's about Nadia, who has a puritanical mother, and she's just been dumped by her lover, and she decides to get away. And she takes a job in Iraq deprogramming, rehabilitating ISIS women. And through this, she forms a friendship with someone that she is trying to rehabilitate. And I like this idea of female friendship under these particular conditions. So I may work a little bit harder to find a copy of this that is available to me, or request a copy or something, because this actually sounds pretty good. This sounds pretty appealing. I like the idea of a female friendship at the heart of a book. This next category is about seasoned authors who have a backlist of some kind, and yet the books I think are still quite unavailable to me. So one of which is Birding by Rose Ronay. It doesn't sound like my kind of thing. It's supposed to be about unreliable narrators and abusive relationships and navigating unhealthy relationships, like women trying to take off with clipped bird wings. I don't know. This is giving me very like Salt Lick vibes from a few years ago. There was like this very unknown book that ended up being a pretty polarizing read. The concept sounded good, but I think the execution was a little bit lacking. I'm not saying that Birding is going to be lacking. I'm just saying that the author photo, it's beautiful, but it's very avant-garde. She's very artiste. She's an artist with a capital A. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes I wonder if the execution of a novel struggles because it is fashion over form, or style over substance. I'm not saying that this book is like that, but it's giving me that vibe, which is kind of turning me off to the book. This next author I was so excited to be introduced to because she has written 7 books. 7! And I don't know who she is. So it's Jennings, and her book that was longlisted is Crooked Seeds. This is set just ever so slightly in the future in 2028 in Cape Town. She's a South African author. And the main question that is being asked to the main character is, was your brother a part of a terrorist group in the 90s? Was he a part of extremism, a few decades before? So I'm interested in as to why she said it just a hair in the future. I'm interested in this extremely well-seasoned, South African writer. I think that's amazing background to be coming to this list with. And the premise also sounds intriguing. The last book that is from a seasoned author, but also I don't think my library will ever get it in, is entitled Somewhere Else. So this is by Jenni Daiches. She was born in America, but she's been in Scotland since 1971. This is a generational novel about womanhood and Judeo-Scottish experiences across 2 wars, the creation of Israel and the fall of the Berlin Wall. So this is this author's 4th novel. She's also written 3 poetry collections, so yet another poet on the list. And I wonder if we'll see that kind of language, that poetic, lyrical, gorgeous, unctuous language coming out in this novel as the reviews start rolling in. Okay, so this next book did not intrigue me until I read this author's accolades, and then I was incredibly intrigued. So it's called The Dream Hotel. Apparently, the government is following our dreams in this world, the people's dreams, being alerted to dreams that seem sketchy. And so this woman has set off the system because she has vicious thoughts against her husband, violent dreams against her husband. They're not even thoughts, they're dreams. And so I was like, well, whatever, it's speculative. Nah. And then I looked up Laila Lalami, and I found out she's a Pulitzer Prize winning finalist. She has been recognized for multiple awards. This is her 5th novel, and she has been medals pinned up, down, and all around town on her. And so I was just really surprised. And also my library has this book, and so I was really just intrigued by that, to see such a seasoned and well regarded author that I don't know. And so if you know anything about this author or this book or her backlist or what's going on with this author, she is at the tippy top of who I'm interested in reading from. So I put myself on the holds list for her book. This next book, I just fell in love with the aesthetics of the cover. I was immediately sucked in, and then going into reading the premise with this just starry-eyed dazzlement of the cover just made me want to read the book even more. And it is The Persians by Sanam Mahloudji. Now, The Persians is about a family who had great wealth at one point. Then they moved to America, and their status and their wealth and their connections are all gone. They're at the very bottom, and it's about trying to rebuild that that air of wealth and status, rebuild that status. It takes place over several decades, from the 1940s to the 2000s, and it's a portrait of a family, which is something that sounds amazing. But most of all, this cover I am just in love with. Now, this is a debut book. My library has it, and I was just so excited to see it on the list. It was just immediately my heart started double beating for it. The last book, I have just been hearing a lot of good buzz around it, and again, my library has it, so it's available to me, and it is Nesting by Roisín O'Donnell. I think a lot of people put this on their predictions list. I think it's being well received, at least with the buzz that I'm following. This is a debut work from an Irish author. I've been enjoying Irish literature. Last year, my favorite book of the year that I read was The Beasting by Paul Murray, who's an Irish writer. And so this is about a mother who decides in a split second to start over, She grabs the clothes off the clothesline, straps her 2 daughters into their car, and takes off. And I think it's about the repercussions of making a decision like that and wondering if you can actually rebuild your life. I don't know, there's something about this book that has me oh so intrigued, and I don't know, all the Shelley spidey senses are all tickled. So that's it. Let me know what has been interesting you. What are you thinking that you're going to pick up? What immediately has stuck out to you? Has your opinions changed as time has gone on? Let a girl know. Would love to hear from you. That's it for me. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye.